So don't do that. What's up, folks? So I'm going to do an unboxing on the Chicago Electric benchtop router table. I have a set of cabinets or cabinet doors. I have ran into this several times, especially remodeling homes built in the 70s, 80s. Something to look out for if you're having to modify or build a new cabinet and you have to resize the doors. Any way you would have to change one of the, or add a new door, change a door in the cabinets. Get with a cabinet guy, unless you know how to make cabinet doors, and make sure that you can still duplicate those cabinet doors. Last time I ran into this, it had a fancy pattern around the outside of the door, and the guy that does my cabinet doors has been doing it. He's the second generation, and his dad had threw away the jig that did that specific pattern 20 years ago. Couldn't find anybody else that had that specific pattern, and you would have to actually have a jig. So it was just a piece of flat wood that had a decorative pattern on it, and you would have had to have a jig in order to do that pattern. I'm not freehand enough to do it. I'm sure I could have made some kind of jig, but just keep that in mind. The remodel that I'm doing right now has a type of door that I can't duplicate. You can't find anybody to duplicate. So I bought a set of Freight, F-R-E-U-D, however you say that. I bought a set of cabinet bits. I am going to, the only thing is these bits have a 1/2-inch shank. The router that I have is an old Ryobi, back when Ryobi was blue, and it's only a 1/4-inch shank. So, Harbor Freight had one. I got to get this done this weekend. It's the only reason I ended up going to Harbor Freight to get it, and I'm not going to use it that often. That router table, I've used quite a bit, but I've had it for probably almost 10 years now, and I've probably used it 40 times over that time frame. So I don't use a router table a whole lot, not enough to justify a big commercial grade router table. So I would imagine, even though this is a low grade router table, it's probably going to last me quite a while. I've been thoroughly impressed with most everything I bought from Harbor Freight here recently. I think the quality of stuff has gone up quite a bit. I bought a little pin light that is a rechargeable pin light. I did not charge it up, just took it out of the package, and I was underneath the house putting a moisture barrier in for 3.5 hours yesterday. And that light stayed charged the entire time. I was thoroughly impressed because I bought some Craftsman and some other brand of rechargeable flashlights that on a full charge don't last maybe an hour and a half, especially at full beam. This doesn't have a bright beam on it, it's just one beam, but pretty awesome little flashlight. I'll see if I can't put a link in the description. So anyway, let me grab a knife, we'll open this up and put it together. Hope y'all like these kind of videos. I'm not really sure what y'all like yet, because I don't have a ton of views, but nothing else, if you end up getting this benchtop router, this will take you through what you're going to get when you open the box. And Harbor Freight's pretty good about putting the, put this over the side, putting the display unit is the actual unit that's in the box. You can kind of see it, but you don't actually see what's in the container. And I would imagine that this is just going to be putting the legs together. So you get it. I believe that's probably a box of legs. It's probably some hardware. Instructions. Fence. table itself. Alright, so flip this upside down. My other router, you can actually take it off and use it as a router. This one has an external switch, and it's made into the table, which is fine. Like, I've had that one for 10 years. That router has never been off. I have a small hand router that I keep in my truck, and then I have a big Craftsman router. So I have no reason to have to undo the router from the table. Let's see what we got. There's a gauge, which goes on here. Scratch that up. Tell you how deep you're going. Pretty nice fence. Let's see what's in this box. Whole bunch of parts. Nowhere on the outside of this box that I could find told me what size shank this was. But looking at the one that was in Harbor Freight, it appeared that it would go up to a 1/2 inch. I'm really hoping that this will, because I don't need another. And that looks like the shank for a 1/2 inch. So you got a box of nuts and bolts, a little miter gauge that I'll probably never use because I've never used the one for my other one. Pretty decent. I mean, it wasn't but $114, so don't expect high grade stuff. Of course, if you're going to Harbor Freight to buy tools, you'll probably know that up front. When the equipment you're buying is 1/3 the cost of a pro grade, don't expect pro grade quality out of it. But, you know, for something you're not using all the time, there's nothing wrong with Harbor Freight's quality of tools. I'm impressed with them. It's got a set of, I believe, guides for your table top. Comes with a set of wrenches to adjust your depth. Actually pretty dummy proof. They put the washers and the nuts together. So all you got to do is just take them apart, put the legs on. We'll bust this apart. This shouldn't take but a couple minutes to, I say that, it'll probably take 10-15 minutes for me to get all the crap I need out to put this together. But it's just a Phillips bit on one side and maybe a 1/4 inch. It's got steel legs. Pretty decent quality. I mean, it's probably 16-inch steel, like that. 5/16. You'll need a 5/16 socket or wrench. And you'll need to make sure that you lose one of the nuts underneath a really dirty workstation. leg. This is your gauge to tell you where you're at on your depth. It goes in this little socket right here. You've got a measuring gauge right here. You tighten it up. See that adjustment after you get it on. Looks like the adjustment on this one is just a set of nuts. And you got a lock nut. So just going to move it where you need it and lock your nuts in. And then it has another lock on this side to actually lock it down. It's a black lever right here. Flip it up, slide it up and down once you get it where you want it. A lot easier to do when it's upside down. And then tighten your nuts up right here to adjust your height setting. So I'm going to take a break and put the other legs on. Basically going to do the exact same thing I just did here, and I'll come back. Done. Pretty sturdy. I mean, it's not. My other one has a metal top. This one is wood. It does have a Formica-like surface on it, which is good. Let's see. This is the dust shroud. And keeps you from getting your fingers caught up in the bit. I won't be able to use this for one of my bits. Oh, like that. Small one. Let's make sure I got this on there right. So it comes with its own figure this out. With that. It's two different shanks. One for a quarter, one for a half, I believe. Maybe 3/8. Miter gauge. This little doohickey, which is the, oh, that's what that's for. Aha. Okay. You don't take that off. There's a cotter key in this. It slides down through here, and then you take this one nut that it came with and screw it into the bottom. Alright, so that's how your dust shroud goes. There's a Phillips screw and a lock head. This has a flat side that goes into there, and the cotter key at the top keeps it from falling off. You can move it out of your way, set your piece of board on there, and then this will stay on it. Alright, you also have this device that allows you to come in at an angle. Let's see if you can get that. So I don't know that I very rarely use that on my other machine. So, there are 2 wing nut assemblies. And there are slots on the top of the table. Over here, and I am putting the washer on the bottom. Let's see. Actually, the washer doesn't need to go in well. The washer on top, and your wing nut. So it's just a slotted hole in the back. But that slotted hole is just the size of the square piece of this nut. So you'll put that square piece up in there, and that'll keep this from walling around while you're tightening it. Put your washer on, which, to be honest, after probably before my first job's done, those washers will be lost. But you can just use the wing nut against the fence. So, let me show you what this looks like. You can see I put that square in, that way this slides and it is setting flush. So if you do it right, that squareness should set down in that slot. Alright, so that is it. And to line it up, there is a fence on here, or a gauge. If you want to cut it at 0, just slide the fence to the 0 marks, tighten it up here, tighten it up on the other side. And if this was made correctly, that should be a straight fence. Bad little setup. Let's plug it in and see what happens. How much crap I can get hung up in. Help if I plug it in. Bad little deal. That it is fully assembled. There's your 2 adjusting wrenches to adjust the nuts on the back. Then adjust this up and down and bring you a little closer. So there is a locking assembly right here that locks it, just loosens it, and adjusts up and down. And in the back, these are the 2 nuts. So They're just double nuts. That's just to keep it, that's what kind of locks it in. This is kind of your mechanical lock. You adjust it up or down wherever you want it. When you get it where you want it, lock this lever in, pull it out, and then lock your nuts up with your wrenches, or with your one wrench. Hold on. We'll scratch that. These wrenches don't go to that, they go to the arbor assembly. So those are just mechanical. And then you can use your gauge to figure out, set it where it's at right now. And then if you need to go up 1/8 of an inch, just move the router table up until the mark is at the 1/8 from where it's at now. These wrenches are for the arbor. So there is a 24 millimeter, I'm guessing, and a 21. 21 goes on the very bottom. And then your 24 goes on the top. And you use those to loosen up the arbor, slide your bit down. And then of course you have these, because there is a hole up here. I'll probably use the biggest one for this. Can change these out. There it is. So you've got 5 of them. Depending on what size bit you're using, you can change them out. I'm going to take a razor knife and clean them up a little bit. But I'm going to get some wood, put in my big bit, and we'll see what happens. Unscrew this all the way off. That's on the router. It comes with a 1/4 inch. You've got a 3/8 and a 1/2 that are with the router. So for my dovetail bit, or not dovetail, but raised panel bit, I guess is what you call it. What do you actually call this? Beveled raised panel bit. I need a 1/2 inch. So I'm going to use this shank. And all I have to do is stick that in the router. And make this look extremely difficult. Just shove it in and put your nut back on. That sucks ass. So don't do that. Can you say dumbass? All right, a couple things to note. I modified this. I cut these out. This router table is not made for this bit. So I took a 3.5 inch keyhole bit and made it big enough to accommodate this. This motor is a lot more powerful than what I have over there. So make sure you screw it down because it will vibrate all over the place if you don't. Make sure everything's tight. The back system doesn't work worth a crap, but most all equipment back systems suck. So, but it does work. I was able to make the raised panels I need. Perfect. Does the trick for the job I'm working on. But just extra tighten your bit. You will have to modify it. I actually wouldn't recommend doing this. I need this for one simple job. So if I have to toss this, I won't. But if I had to toss this afterwards, it's paid for itself. But make sure you screw it down. If you just leave it on the bench and turn it on, it's going to vibrate all over the place. You'll have a hard time keeping the table steady while you're moving your piece of work. So yeah.